Okay, I think we're ready to go then. I really want to welcome all of you here to Stylin with APA Style. My name is Cynthia Kane, and I'm really happy because I actually recognize some of these faces. I know I've had a chance to work with you in some psychology classes, or maybe art therapy, or perhaps some other one-on-one individual sessions. I wanted to make sure that you did have my contact information on your handout for our PowerPoint presentation. Please always feel free to email me. If you call and I don't happen to be available at my number, you can always leave voicemail as well, and I'll get back with you. But I would love to work with you all one-on-one, not only with APA-style questions. If you have any questions at all about how to do research for your fields of study, I am the librarian liaison for psychology and for counselor education, so that does include art therapy as well. And I'm also the librarian liaison for the School of Library and Information Management, so I keep kind of busy. Basically what that means is that over the years, I have had to learn a lot more about APA style because I work with the very specific departments that use that. So what I'd like for you to do today is we're going to be doing a very quick overview of what APA style is, why we do what we do when it comes to APA style. I think sometimes that can be a little bit more challenging because sometimes it just doesn't make much sense. I'm also going to make sure that I give you, and you also have on your handouts, some links for some helpful information on how to check for APA style, how to find answers to questions that may not actually be in your APA publication manual. So that's what we'll be doing in the next half hour. At the end of the half hour, I'll go ahead and I'll stop this recording, but I also want to make sure I'm around after 4:30 if you have any questions or need to follow up with anything as well. So I wanted to start first with just a little bit of a background about what APA, or the American Psychological Association style, is all about. Some of you may be very familiar with APA, and others of you might have come from disciplines in which you use something like MLA style, the Modern Language Association. I see some nods of the heads right now, some recognition. I came from a humanities background. I was actually an English major before I went into library science. And because of that, I was very familiar with APA citation style. I basically learned after the fact some of the differences between APA and MLA, and I have to be honest, sometimes some of that didn't exactly make sense to me. So I wanted to give you just a real quick background on why we do what we do with APA style. The philosophy of APA is that it is designed specifically for scientific research with an eye toward publication. So they want you to publish in psychological journals, basically social science journals, and so forth. One of the links that I'm going to give you in a little bit deals with frequently asked questions, or FAQs, about APA. And essentially what APA says, the American Psychological Association, is that rules of style in scientific writing encourage full disclosure of essential information and allow us to dispense with minor distractions. I love that. That sounds very philosophical. Basically what that means is that APA focuses upon two aspects. So you might have wondered, first of all, why it's always important in in-text citations to put the year of the publication. They always make you put that, 1996, 1896, 2014. The reason is that in psychology and in related disciplines, the focus is upon the relative currency of information. And that's a big difference between that and MLA, because with MLA, we're dealing with humanities disciplines. And in the humanities, older information can be just as valid as more current information. In scientific disciplines, we're focusing upon when this was actually published. So that's why they put that focus upon that year of publication in parentheses. I always thought that was kind of interesting. And they also want to make sure that we are accurate when it comes to complex materials such as tables and statistics. We'll have a chance later on to see an APA sample paper, and I will show you what APA tends to emphasize in terms of setting up tables, charts, diagrams in a research paper. So that's where the emphasis is. So I decided that it might be kind of interesting to pull out some differences in citations when it comes to APA style, the Chicago Manual of Style, which is used in a lot of social sciences disciplines, and MLA. And one thing you're going to notice right away is that with APA style, we do not spell out the first names of the authors. We use those as initials instead, and they're very specific about that. And then after the author's name, we then have the year in parentheses because, again, we're focusing upon when that citation was actually published. The Chicago Manual of Style and the MLA style are fairly similar because they both spell out the full names of the authors, the first name and the last name, and the focus isn't as much, especially when it comes to MLA, the focus isn't as much upon the year of publication. One of the biggest differences, too, is that with MLA, and this has changed a little bit with the 8th edition of MLA, but MLA tends to want to know where that information came from. So in the MLA citation, we see that this citation actually came from the PsycInfo database. Whereas in APA style, we're not mentioning the database. That is less important and less relevant. The focus, again, is upon the year and the authors, but then stripping out any information about the first names of the authors, except for the initials. So there are some differences. Another key difference is that with APA style, if you look at the title of the article, you'll notice that we don't put that title of the article in double quotation marks. On the other hand, with Chicago and with MLA, we do set off the actual title of the article in double quotation marks, more of a stylistic difference. And the other difference we see is that with the APA title of the article, you'll notice that they are capitalizing the first word of the title of the article and then the first word of anything following the subtitle, but then everything else is in lowercase. Again, just more of a stylistic difference. So I'm going to pose a question, and I am pretty much guessing that I'm going to see some nods of the head in our audience, and probably also online for anybody who's watching this as well. So probably all of you at some point have used in a database the cite feature or citation tools where you can generate the citation of an article. Don't rely on that to be 100% accurate. And I see some people going, oh yeah. And I know it can be incredibly frustrating because you think, this has to be correct. And you put it in a references list, and then you get your paper back from your professor, and it might have a lot of red marks on it. Very disappointing, very discouraging. It's not any error that you made. One thing to remember is that databases, like PsycInfo, for example, are only going to be as accurate as the way the information was put into that database in the first place. And I gave you an example on here. So I did a search for an article in a database called Academic Search Premier, which we have. And I said that I wanted that citation to be generated in APA style. So I did that, and I copied and I pasted it directly. Notice some things immediately. One thing that you will notice is that the title of the article, all of the major words are capitalized. We already know that we don't do that in APA style. That's because that's the way it was entered into the database. It doesn't have anything to do with you making a mistake or anything like that. So what that means is that citation tools are really great in databases. I use them to save time because then at least I have the elements of the citation and I don't have to retype stuff over and over again. But proofread, because you might have to go back and do some editing. So in this case, I would need to go back and change those words that are capitalized in the title of the article to lowercase. So again, I'd have to do a few little errors and just basically kind of correct some things here and there. It doesn't take very long, but the general rule of thumb is I probably would not rely upon a citation tool generator in a database to be 100% accurate. And again, it's kind of frustrating when that happens. So what I'm going to do in just a second is show you some of these links and basically get you a little bit more familiar with different ways of dealing with APA style. Yes?
For the one of the page before,
Mhm.
isn't the of not supposed to be capitalized either? Okay, I was just checking.
That is very true. Yes. In fact, let me page back up again, and let's go back to that. I'm so glad that you caught that. So the question was, in this citation that I copied and pasted from the database, the word of, which is in the title of the journal, wound up being capitalized. And yeah, I'd have to change that to lowercase as well.
But the journal, it's everything can be capitalized, right?
Yes,
like,
that's exactly it. Yeah.
Not like of.
Exactly, exactly. Not the minor words like of or the or a or an or anything like that. That's a good. Thank you for catching that. Yeah, yeah. And you see how easy that is to.
I messed up on that, so that's why I was like. Oh.
I'm glad that you said that. And again, it's just the way that that information has been put into the database, and we don't have any control over that. In fact, just a quick story. One time I was working with some graduate teaching assistants, and I think they were feeling really frustrated because their students had a lot of errors in the citations for their bibliographies or their references list. And they kept saying, well, Cynthia, can't you do anything about that? I mean, you're there in the library, you're a librarian. And I said, this is true, but I have no control over the way something has been put into a database. And once we talked about that, they were like, oh, okay. And I said, just make sure that your students are proofreading, teach them how to do this in class, and we'll teach them how to do that in the library as well. So yeah, it gets really frustrating. So I'm going to be sharing some more of these links right now because I want to make sure that you guys are all familiar with these different links to help you for more information. So before we go on, how many of you use the online writing lab, the AL at Purdue site for APA style? Okay. Do you find that to be pretty helpful? We've got some who do use it. Okay. We're going to take a look at that because I do want to show you something in there that you may have had a chance to use before or something that maybe you haven't had a chance to see. So we'll look at that in a little bit as well. Updates for the American Psychological Association Publication Manual are available at this link at the AL at Purdue site. They will kind of show some of the latest updates. We do have the print version of the APA Publication Manual here in the library. So if you're here in the library, and if you ever just want to look at the print edition, ask at the reference desk, and we'll be happy to show you where that is. It can't be checked out because everybody else wants to use it too, but you can take a look and see what the print version has to say. So that's not a problem at all. I mentioned a little bit about the electronic databases and the citation tools that we do have to be careful of, but one thing I wanted to do is I'm going to copy, actually I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to click on this link, and I'm going to check my sharing at this point because sometimes I have to change my sharing so that everybody can see that. So we can see it on our end, but I just want to make sure it shows up on the recording as well. This is a list of frequently asked questions or FAQs about APA style. This is what I really like about this. This FAQ list has been generated directly from the American Psychological Association, so it is vetted. You know that it is going to be reliable because it's coming directly from APA, as opposed to somebody's idea of what APA style is. I'm a huge believer in going back to the original source and making sure that I'm getting that specific information. And I sort of like some of these FAQs. I like this one. What is APA style? Can you send it to me? My paper is due. No, I can't do that. But this just tells you a little bit more about the background of APA style, which originated back in 1929, so it's been around for a while. There is a free tutorial, and I have the link for you on my next page as well. This is a flash tutorial about the basics of APA style. I'm not going to take up your time on showing it to you right now. I just want you to know that it is available, and I do have a link for it on my next slide as well. This is an awesome tutorial because rather than having to sit through a long list of stuff, it's broken down into different elements. So let's say you just want a quick review of how to construct a references list. You can go directly to that. If you need a quick review of how to do an in-text citation, you can go directly to that as well. And sometimes that can be a really good refresher or just kind of a reminder. I'm going to go back over here, to our slideshow, because the next link that I really want you to take a look at is one that you may or may not have seen. So we're going to go ahead and look at this one. And this is called the APA Style Blog. I'll wait for this to load. There it goes. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I'm sharing this. There we are. Have any of you seen, make sure I'm actually sharing that again. Sorry about this. I want to make sure that I'm getting that for our recording. So have any of you ever seen the APA Style Blog? Oh, you have to use this. This is probably one of my favorite tools. So it's not uncommon for me as the liaison for psychology to get questions from students. And they might say, you know, my professor told me that actually it would be okay if I did a citation of a posting from Facebook or a Twitter posting or from some other type of social media. How do I do that in APA style? I have absolutely no idea. That kind of information is not going to be in the publication manual of APA for the most part, because the APA publication manual was published in 2009. It's almost 10 years ago now. And look what's changed in terms of social media, as well as other ways of accessing information. So the great thing about the APA Style Blog is that this is generally updated fairly regularly. It looks like the last update was December 14th of 2017. And this is actually updated by people that work at APA. And essentially, they just write short articles about anything having to do with APA style. It could be in-text citations. They're talking about widows and orphans, in this case of headings being alone at the very bottom of the page. References versus citations. But the great thing about the blog, too, is you can just search over here for your question. So I'm going to search for social media. And this led me then to a list of articles that were written by people that contribute to the blog about how to deal with social media. So here's one, how to cite social media in APA style. And if I click on this first one, and again, I just wanted to make sure I was sharing that. This is telling us how to cite a Twitter moment in APA style. How to cite a YouTube channel. How to cite a YouTube comment. Basically just about everything you could think of. And I think this is really crucial because when you think about it, there are so many other ways that we do our research and we get our information anymore. I belong to a lot of Facebook groups that have very valid information. And so I might want to cite that. You might want to do that if you're doing some ethnographic research or anything in which you're gathering information from a lot of different venues, including social media. So the APA Style Blog will be one of your best friends on updated information on how to cite, how to write papers, basically anything that you have in mind. So do that search feature, and I think you should be good to go. That's kind of one of my favorite little secrets. I'm going to go back over here and back to our slideshow. Now, here we go. And I know it looks like most of you have used the online writing lab, the OWL at Purdue site, but I'm going to go ahead and click on that again, because there is something with the OWL at Purdue site that I just want to make sure that you all are aware of, just in case you have never seen it. So when you scroll down to the side, there's some really nice little navigations about how to do in-text citations, the basics, footnotes and endnotes if you ever have to do that, articles and periodicals, electronic sources. Have any of you looked at this link called APA Sample Paper? Oh, good, 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 good. This is one of my favorite ones. So if you click on this link, this is basically everything you need to know and then some about how to set up your paper in APA style. And I really love this because it will tell you the blue boxes will contain directions for writing and citing in APA style, and the green text boxes will contain explanations of APA style guidelines, so why we are doing what we are doing. So this will show you how to set up the first page of your paper, what you need to do with the abstract, a summary of the paper, what different headings should look like, what your references list should look like. And this is one of the biggest differences for me to remember, because since I came from an MLA background, I'm very used to saying works cited, and I had to get away from that. This is references in APA style. If you are dealing with an appendix, it will show you how to set up the appendix, what your chart should look like, and so forth. So yeah, I'm really glad that you guys have been using that. This is probably one of my favorite things on here. And I like this too because it's the same thing that we saw with the APA style blog. I can search in that. Yeah.
Just a quick question about
Sure.
references. So like if you had two authors with the last names that started with both A and like went A, S, would you like keep seeing what like the next letter of their last name was and then just reference it alphabetical order that way?
You could do that. The other thing you could do, the question has to do with authors who might have the same last name and possibly the same first initials. Is that what you're thinking of? Okay. The other thing you could do is you could look at the titles of their articles or titles of their works. And the one that would come first in alphabetical order is in terms of the title of the work or the title of the article, that could be cited. That could come first in your references list. So you can do it that way. MLA deals with a lot of the same thing, but in APA that can be a little bit more common because you might have Smith J and Smith J, Smith John and Smith Jane. But yes, you could also, if they have more than one author, you could also use the subsequent authors to help alphabetize that as well. Yeah. Single authors, though, I would focus on the title of the work, like the title of the article, and put that in alphabetical order. So that's a great question. Yeah. Sometimes you can just get into these minute details with the references list, and it feels like you're spending as much time on that as it did to write the paper. So, and my advice, too, this kind of goes without saying, but if you really get stuck on how to do something in APA style, don't hesitate to check with your professor, the professor for whom you're writing the paper, because it's been, I could be totally wrong, but it's been my experience that certainly here at ESU, the professors are really responsive. And some actually might have more stringent guidelines than others might. If some are not responsive, you go with your own best judgment based on what you've been able to find out in the publication manual and then in other sites like this. Go back in here and go back to the slideshow. The last one that I wanted to show, I keep doing that. The last one that I wanted to show was this link for our APA style guide here at the library. And with this one, this is one that I wrote, and it's kind of like the APA Outlet Purdue site, except it's not quite as in-depth. The one at Purdue is really in-depth. This one I wrote basically just to cover general guidelines on citing articles, books, test reviews, audiovisual media, and so forth. I would consider this to be a good basic one. If you have like a really quick question, then I would go to the publication manual, and I would also check the Outlet Purdue site for more in-depth questions. But I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that as well. We'll go back here. Now, I keep clicking on that one. This was the APA Flash tutorial that I mentioned just a little bit ago. I'm going to go ahead and click on this. Yes, we do. And I'm going to share this. And this is loading here. We will not play all of this, but this is one that I mentioned
Basics of ink.
You can see it does work. This is the one that I mentioned a few minutes ago that will let you select whatever you're interested in. So there's a quick one, it looks like it's only about 42 seconds, on reducing bias in language if you're writing about something. And then a lot of different links on citing references in text, how to construct the reference list, and so forth. And I like this again because you can just go in here on this tutorial, select whatever it is that you're interested in watching. It'll take less than a minute. And sometimes that's all that you do. It's kind of like watching a YouTube video on how to do something. So further resources. Do any of you use any software programs like Zotero or Mendeley or anything like that? Does that sound familiar? Okay. So I'm going to do a plug here. Zotero and Mendeley are both totally free. They are bibliographic management programs, and the great thing about those is that they will let you download citations from databases, but also from websites, from library catalogs, from Amazon, basically from anything, and they will let you organize your citations in different folders or different collections so that you have all of those available, not only to create bibliographies. In the cases of Zotero and Mendeley, they will also link to offline copies of PDFs of articles, which is awesome because it means that you don't have to worry about having a PDF of an article here and try to remember where you save that. All of that can be saved in Zotero or Mendeley and then available to you at any point. We're about at the end of this session, but this is my plug. If you're interested, I'm going to be doing a session on Zotero and Mendeley and then other software programs on Wednesday, March 14th at 4 p.m. That says library seminar room, but I think probably we'll just be back here in the electronic classroom as well. That one will also be recorded like this one is. So if you're interested in that, mark that on your calendar. We'll be pushing that one out as well. And I'd love to teach you how to use Zotero and Mendeley. I use that for my own research, and it is awesome. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and end our recording.